This week's Injury Update is brought to you by the Jacksonville Orthopedic Institute. JOI is the official sports medicine provider of the Jacksonville Jaguars.
And welcome in for the first time, Dr. James Perry. And Doc, Happy New Year, by the way. Lower back injuries, the topic today. And we always talk about the NFL. Gosh, I got to believe the lower back of these guys hurt quite often.
Oh, yeah. Hey, Happy New Year. Thanks for having me. For sure. These guys on the gridiron, they're stressing it out quite a bit, and they need a lot of maintenance. But thankfully, we got a good team keeping them going.
Yeah. What kind of injuries, I guess, specifically do you get with the lower back? Because there's a lot of muscle down there as well, right?
Right, yeah. So the lower back is not as mobile as a lot of the other joints. So, your shoulders, your knees, your hips, they see different types of wear and tear. Those ligament and tendon injuries you have around them can be a little bit more problematic because of the mobility you need from those joints. But in the low back, with all the muscle layers and the deeper, nature of it, the sprains and sprains are a lot more common. And then, obviously, depending on how much force goes through there, the worst injuries, getting into the fractures and the disc herniations or tears are usually the worst injuries.
Let's stay with the muscles part of that for a minute before we get into maybe that more severe category. I don't know, maybe that's not the right way to say it, but at least it sounds it the way you put it. Is it a matter of stretching a lot of these things to avoid injury? Like, is there good injury, a good way to prepare to not get injured, at least from a muscle standpoint in the lower back?
Yeah, the stretching and strengthening both, they're both very important. So keeping it limber but keeping it strong are really the important things to do your prevention. Whether you're talking about the professional athletes or just your weekend warrior or just people, putting the Christmas decorations away in the attic, the being proactive about keeping your back health with the stretching and the strengthening both are important for us.
Dr. James Perry from Jacksonville Orthopedic Institute here on Brent and Friends on ESPN 690. You can learn more about Dr. Perry at joionline.net as well. Talking back injuries, specifically lower back injuries. And I guess when we think about the spine area, which you specialize in, my mind goes, and I don't know about everybody else, but my mind goes to more the top of the spine and the neck injuries that we see in professional football. Is there more associated with the lower spine that we don't know about?
Well, I don't know about. Whenever there's a high-profile injury, we tend to hear about it and talk about it more in those instances. The neck is a lot more mobile, and with some of the whiplash, spear tackling type of injuries that we get in the neck, there can also be some worse type of problems when you have a major injury in the neck. But the low back, the injuries, they're plenty common. There's just a lot of maintenance that goes with them, and a lot of stuff that you can generally work through because you have so much innate support in that area.
Yeah, that makes some sense. Just overall, obviously, the neck and spine and these injuries that we see, there's so much precaution. It seems like too often, obviously, but so many times we're watching a game, collegiate level, maybe even high school level, but definitely the NFL level, where there will be a long delay after an injury. Maybe even the cart comes out, some stabilization, but then we soon learn that the player is okay. So obviously a good thing could be anything from a stinger to a scare, but it seems like the stabilization and the caution that is now used to immobilize those areas as a just-in-case happens more than it used to. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, and I think it's really an abundance of caution when it comes to these things because these guys, they're so tough. They bounce back from so much. And whenever they go down and they have a significant complaint, or if they're having issues, there's some red flags, if they have issues in their limbs, their arms and legs, the stinger should just be one side. If it's a neck injury and it's on both sides, we start to become more concerned. And then, of course, we've seen some pretty bad injuries over the past, 5 to 10 years still. That I think the abundance of caution is what leads to the people getting carted off, sent off to the local medical centers and getting the more, acute workup. And thankfully, this year there hasn't been, as much, happening so far, which we're happy for.
Yeah, absolutely. The abundance of caution is a good thing, by the way, when we talk about it in this context. You just mentioned something, stinger, though. I think we hear that term all the time, and you just kind of defined it. That's on one side of the body, and that's what a stinger will affect?
Correct. Yeah. So whenever you get a stinger, it should just be on one side. So, one area in the shoulder, down the arm. Usually it's short-lived, goes away. There may be some, brief numbness or weakness in that limb, whether it be the upper arm muscles, the hand, but it usually resolves pretty quickly. And it's due to some stretch in those nerves that run through there, whether it be the neck or the area under the collarbone. But because it's just a stretch, you bounce back from that, and it's typified by a pretty quick resolution.
You can see Dr. James Perry from Jacksonville Orthopedic Institute at the San Marco location. JOI joins us each and every week here, Brent and Friends on ESPN 690. Let's finish with this, Doc, about the back injuries. What, from a lower back standpoint, what is the most common thing that you do see?
Well, the sprain and the strain, there's a large ligamentous complex at the bottom of the spine called the iliolumbar ligament. It's a common one that basically attaches the spine to the pelvis. It's one of the more common ones to be injured. And then, of course, like with any injury, there's a range to it from mild to severe. And then, of course, your strains in your muscles in your back, they're very, very common. So whether it be, again, the big guys or the weekend warriors, that's still the most common thing we see.
Dr. Perry, appreciate your time. Thanks for the insight on lower back injuries. Happy New Year to you, and we'll see if the Jags can get a W here on Sunday.
All right, take care. Go Jags.